Penguin Random House Audio presents Francine's Spectacular Crash and Burn, a novel by Renee Swindle, read for you by Bahni Turpin. Chapter 1. I'm not going to spend too much time telling you about my mother's death. I have to tell you about it because it's what started everything, but her passing isn't the point. I mean, it's not the focus. Not really. I will say that even after all the therapy in the world, I still sometimes blame myself for what happened. Or I'll blame Aunt Leanne. Even though neither is true. No one was to blame. Prior to her death, there was nothing going on in my life. Just the days sort of bleeding into each other. I was 25 years old, living at home, and I spent most of my time with my mother. And, yes, it was as pathetic as it sounds. Mom gave astrological readings and motivational talks. I was in charge of filming her YouTube channel. She was corny as hell, but her followers liked her videos and trusted her readings. At the time, she had over 100,000 subscribers. Anyway, Sunday, 2 days before she died, she sat behind her desk wearing a bright yellow raincoat and hat like a meteorologist stuck in a storm. She used all kinds of props and costumes in her videos. The garage was filled with her stuff. I fixed the lens so that it held tightly on her face. Ready? She did one of her warm-up exercises, closing her eyes and blowing through her lips, making them vibrate like a rudder. She gave a nod, and I counted off like a director on a movie set. Good morning, love doves. Renee Stevenson here with today's astrological weather sighting. Jupiter enters Aquarius, so take hold. It's going to get stormy. She picked up the umbrella next to her desk and gave it a twirl. Like I said, corny as hell. My Leos, it's time to start that project you've had on the back burner. The winds of Venus will be growing stronger, which will create problems if you're not prepared. We made her videos on the weekends and posted them throughout the month, 1 or 2 per week. At the end of each reading, Mom shared advice, things she'd read in books or heard from the self-help gurus she followed. She'd put her own personal spin on the lesson and pass it on. It was all bullshit when you considered the lie she was living. She was like all the other charlatans out there, like those preachers damning you from the pulpit, then you find out they're having an affair or molesting a kid. Well, she wasn't that bad. I guess you could say she was more like the celebrity you thought was living their best life, only to learn they'd checked themselves into rehab. Mom suffered from anxiety and bouts of agoraphobia that were so bad she wouldn't leave the house for weeks at a time, sometimes months if I let her get away with it. You'd never have known any of this based on the videos, or if you met with her over Zoom for a reading, yet she ticked off every box for the most severe cases of agoraphobia. I asked her several times what started it, if something had happened, but she'd never tell me anything except BS like, "The past is the past for a reason, and I refuse to live there." For the last video, Mom changed into a Viking princess costume, with a Viking hat that had long blonde ponytails attached to the inside. Mom had soft features, big, warm brown eyes, a small gap between her front teeth. I knew her heart was in the right place, but the blonde wig clashed with her dark brown skin. And at 5 feet 4 inches, she was nearly 300 pounds, and the dress she wore tight and ill-fitting. I counted off, pointed. She held up her plastic sword and shield, did her thing until I said cut. "Are you sure that was okay?" I was tired and ready to tell her whatever she needed to hear. "You were great." "I don't know. I feel like my energy is off today. I think it's because you know who is coming. You know who was my Aunt Leanne, my mom's half-sister. Those two couldn't stand each other. She took off the silly Viking hat. Go and get me a pill, would you? You already had your pill. She begged, and we went back and forth. Mom and I bickered like enemies at times, but she was my best friend. My only friend, really. And I knew how much Aunt Leanne stressed her, so we compromised on her taking half a pill. Thanks, baby. She smiled her Renee Stevenson smile, the smile she saved for her videos. I hated that smile. Her pills were lined up on the kitchen counter under the windowsill. She'd stopped taking her regular medication about 2 years before, after one of her clients, Alphonse, became her direct supplier. We weren't sure how Alphonse, he didn't give his last name, a man from the Czech Republic of all places, had access to so many drugs. We assumed he was a chemist or pharmacist. Mom didn't ask, and Alphonse never disclosed his secret. Through the tarot, she predicted his wife was cheating and guided him through his divorce. Eventually, they became friends, and she told him about her anxiety and depression. One day, she read his chart and advised him not to go to work. Sure enough, the train he normally took jumped the rails, leaving 2 passengers dead and several others injured. He paid her back for saving his life by sending her pills. You no longer go to doctor. I take care of you, his note read. And boy, did he take care of her. No matter how much I complained, she refused to go back to her regular meds. The prescriptions were printed in Czech, so Alphonse wrote on the labels with a black marker in scrawny script and poor English instructions like, take these when you're sad always, or take these for good sleep. I have the pill from the bottle, take these for very good courage, and poured a glass of orange juice. Mom's anxiety had started several years earlier, around my freshman year of high school. She'd always had bouts of depression, but with my help, and this meant sometimes pleading with her to get out of bed, she was able to keep her job working in the Human Resources Department at East Bay Utilities. Over time, she stopped letting anyone into the house. But her YouTube business kept growing, and she started selling bath potions and oils meant to help customers ward off bad juju and manifest the life of their dreams. By the time I'd graduated from high school, she was living solely off her astrology business and a telemarketing job she'd found that required no commute. I had a shitload of resentment toward her during that time, which you'll have to forgive me for. I mean, I had no idea she was going to die. How was I supposed to know she was going to die? Which leads me to telling you right now, ask forgiveness, accept the apology, ask the burning questions, give the hugs, and say your I love yous. Because it may be cheesy AF, but it's true. We are all on borrowed time. Every one of us. Chapter 2. Aunt Leanne and Uncle CJ showed up a few hours after we'd wrapped up filming. It was a week before Christmas. Uncle CJ was a Jehovah's Witness, so, out of respect, Mom and I decided not to put up a tree until he was out of sight. Neither of us was into the holiday anyway, since there was no one to celebrate it with. Aunt Leanne and Uncle CJ were our only remaining relatives, and the best thing about Aunt Leanne was that she lived in Fresno, a 2.5-hour drive from Oakland, which meant we didn't have to see her much. My dad, I should mention, died when I was 9 years old. He was one of a handful of black foremen in the Bay Area and was struck by a beam on a construction site. He was the kind of man who liked to joke around, like the time he gave me a plate of Oreo cookies, but had secretly replaced the fillings with toothpaste. That kind of thing. Aunt Leanne and Mom lasted a good 30 minutes before the bickering started.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?